On the show, and it's Parker Van Dyke. Parker, if you follow Utah basketball at all, and I'm assuming you do because you're watching this, Parker had a great 4-year career with us, hit some awesome shots, some game-winning shots. You may recognize him from the basketball highlight in the opening. It's the same guy, just a couple years older, but still looks pretty much the same. And so I appreciate Parker coming on. He's going to talk a little bit about his career, the program then, and what he sees as the program now. Hopefully give us a little insight as to what we should expect in this upcoming season.
And they'll run it, Jordan! Ty Jordan! See you later! Touchdown, Utah!
4 seconds, 3 seconds. Back to Van Dyke, deep 3 up. And good! It's good!
They just need this to finish their best beam rotation of the year. And looking forward, says get on your feet.
So Parker, first of all, thanks for coming on.
Hey, it's good to be here, and you got a great setup, and any time to talk about the Utes is a good time, so I'm excited to be here and relive some memories and talk about the future of Utah basketball.
That's great. I appreciate it. Well, let's start off by reliving some memories. Obviously, I think everybody down to the most casual fan probably knows the UCLA shot, and that was a phenomenal thing. Walk us through that play just a little bit, because if you watch that play, and you can very easily by watching the highlight in the opening, you see Parker coming off, I believe he came off a screen, and he had 2 defenders. One of them was right there. I don't know how the ball got through the guy's hand, but there was like some kind of morphing or something. So tell me your whole thoughts about that, and were you nervous at all and all that kind of thing?
So it's an amazing play, and I've rehearsed it in my mind and I've talked about it a lot, how it went down, and I still can't fully grasp that it actually happened. It was such an incredible moment, an incredible shot. So a couple things to keep in mind is we did some things that were unusual for us during the end of that game. Typically in the Utah basketball system, when I was playing, we would have our 4-man take the ball out of bounds. But about a minute left in the game, we made the decision to have me take the ball out of bounds when UCLA scored, so then I could then trail the play and have an opportunity to hit a shot. I hit 4 previous threes in the second half, so I was kind of feeling it. So Coach K and Coach Connor kind of made that adjustment earlier in the game. And so they're at the free throw line shooting free throws. They go 1 for 2, so we're down 2, 92-90. I take the ball out of bounds and throw it to Cedric Bearfield, and Cedric was kind of our best scorer at the time. So everyone's thinking, especially UCLA, he's the guy who's going to take the shot. But Cedric does a great job as he has the ball in his right hand, crosses over to his left, and he kind of acts as an assist man and a screener as he kind of comes and cuts me off a little bit, and I trail right behind him.
Right.
And so he kind of screens my guy as he passes it to me, and I just caught the ball, and there was 2 guys right there, but I just jumped up and just let it fly. And at that moment, that's all you can do. And the shot goes in, and we go crazy. The moment you asked if I was nervous or how I was feeling, one of the craziest things about that, I don't think I'd ever been more calm in a basketball game than I was that moment when I was running up the floor at Pauley Pavilion with John Wooden's name on the court. As I passed the ball and I was running up the floor, I don't know why, I just was so calm.
Let's put that in perspective just a little bit. First of all, he mentioned Pauley Pavilion, which is an iconic basketball stadium. One of my dreams is to go to all the iconic basketball stadiums across the country, like Duke's and Kentucky's and Kansas's and all that kind of thing. And we have one right here in our own conference, which is Pauley. For Parker to be able to kind of recognize that as he's coming up, to see that John Wooden, name on the court is really cool. But for you to have that sense of calm in a situation like that, let me ask you this. So you recognize those 2 defenders after Ced had set that screen, because I know he came off and he kind of turned around and just kind of tossed it to you like that, and you just got it all in rhythm Rhythm's always a good thing when you're shooting.
Yeah.
All in rhythm. You just went up, and another good thing for Parker is that he always got a little height on his jump shot. It was definitely a jump shot and not a set shot. And you had probably their 3 or 4 guy. I think it was number 17 who was jumping at you and kind of doing the sideways thing because he didn't want to foul you on a 3. And all of that is just that's an amazing thing.
Yeah, I don't quite know how I got it off because the picture doesn't look like I do. It looks like I should get blocked. Jalen Smith, I think's the guy's name who was up there, who's about a 6'9" guy with a long wingspan
and highly athletic.
Yeah, and highly athletic. And so I just had a split second where I had the opening where I could see the hoop when Cedric gave me the ball, and I just jumped up with as much confidence as I probably have ever shot a shot in my life and just let it fly. And one thing that, if you look closely, I did kind of have to almost adjust my shot a little bit. Because as I caught the ball, the hoop was open, but when I went up for it, then I see hands at me. I have to kind of adjust my shot just a little bit to get it off. And so
I'm going to be watching real close for that.
Watch little close. It's very subtle. It's very subtle, but I still remember the feeling of the ball leaving my hand. And it just was one of those shots where it was in when it left your hands. And
the shot heard round the world.
Yeah.
For Utah fans, anyway.
And you mentioned Pauley Pavilion. Just the opportunity to play in a place like that and to have a shot in a moment in a place like that. You've got championship banners throughout the whole arena. You've got Bill Walton, Reggie Miller, to name just a few retired numbers in the rafters. I mean, those are what dreams are made of, and that's what that's why you play at Utah. You have those opportunities.
So, kind of a silly question, but after you saw that go through the net, nothing but net, by the way. After you saw that go through the net, what was your feeling at that point?
Oh man, it was unbelievable thought. I couldn't believe it because we were also down 22 in that game.
Right.
And so not
only was a comeback.
Not only was it that shot, we're down 22 with like 14 minutes left in the game, and then
12 with like 2 or 3 minutes left in the game.
Still down by 12 or 2 or 3 minutes. So it was just a culmination of so many amazing things. And so I just freak out, start screaming. I turn to Cedric and we bear hug each other, and then the whole bench runs on the floor. There's the famous scene of Coach Andy Hill who's doing this like up and down trot down the whole floor, and we're just celebrating the whole time. And so it was literally 5 minutes of just pandemonium, of just yelling and screaming and just pure excitement. Like it was unbelievable. I'll never forget it. No one else will. That's the beauty of it. Is everyone who was involved in that game and that shot, it's their favorite moment.
And I would also add to it, not just the people in the program, but any decent fan is probably going to remember that shot, kind of like they remember the Manny Hendricks shot against Wyoming, where he got the ball with like 1.4 seconds left or something, hit a turnaround jumper from the corner. I was a bad fan that night.
You didn't. Don't tell me you went home.
Well, so here's the deal. Manny and I are close friends, have been for 38 years, and I was so frustrated with how we were playing that we were going to lose to Wyoming. Even though Wyoming was, an improving team and whatnot, and I walked out. I was so frustrated. I walked out of the game, and I get across the street, and I'm to the parking lot, and I hear this roar, and I turn around, and to this day, I swear I saw the roof of the Huntsman Center about a foot or two off where it normally sits. And I'm going, what happened? What happened? Yeah. And I go home and find on the news that Manny hit that turnaround three.
Oh, man.
So
you learned a lesson to never
I
leave.
never ever leave early anymore.
No.
Ever. I did it once in football, and the same thing happened. It was the Air Force game when we came back from like 21-7, and we ended up winning 22-21. You should look that game up. It was crazy.
Never leave, yeah.
Yeah, never leave. Never ever be part of the experience. So anyway, Parker, you had some other great shots in your career, and we were talking off camera about kind of what triggered, a change that took you from averaging 8-ish points a game to a significantly higher number, statistically higher number, something that wasn't a fluke. And you can't necessarily explain it, but tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, my senior year, I really made a boost in terms of my stats and my output and my performance, where, like you said, I was averaging, going into conference play, I was averaging about 8 to 10 points a game. And then a moment happened, and then all of a sudden, throughout the second half of conference play, I was averaging anywhere from 15 to 18 a game. And it was actually it was before the UCLA shot this happened. We were playing Washington State at home, and we had a specific defensive game plan for that specific Washington State team. They were a team that just lived and died by the three. They had the highest three-point percentage in the conference and actually the lowest two-point percentage in the conference. And so we played an uncharacteristic defense where we were really pressuring and up in the passing lanes, which was not our style of defense, but we were trying to make them do something they didn't want to do, and that was simply to shoot twos, take away the three-point shot. And so I was really out pressuring about 30 feet away from the basket in the passing lane, and one of their players actually happened to throw the ball, and it hit the back of my hand, and I had the ball, and I had a breakaway, wide open opportunity at the hoop, and I, instead of laying it up, which I think everyone thought I was going to do, I just jumped up and dunked it with two hands, which was my first and only dunk as a Ute. And
at least in a game.
At least in a game, exactly. And it was probably the highest I've ever jumped, the hardest I've ever dunked the ball, and my teammates were going crazy for me. And for whatever reason, that moment clicked something in my mind. It just gave me this unbelievable boost of confidence and this sense of composure that carried me to the rest of the year. And so from that moment on, my point averages went up about 5 or 6 to 8 points. I hit about 2 or 3 more threes a game, and it all kind of stemmed from that Washington State dunk. I don't know why, but that was the moment. Then a week later, that was the UCLA shot, and then a week after that, I had 23 points against Arizona in a win, and then I finished the year strong that way. So I always look back, that dunk, that was the moment that.
Now, if you could just bottle whatever that was and sell it to, especially our players.
Sell it to them. My advice is just, if you can dunk, maybe find a way to just get a dunk in a game.
Right.
It maybe it really boosts your confidence, especially when I'm a 6'3" guard. I'm not supposed to be doing that. And so I don't know, but it definitely clicked. It clicked something.
That's cool. That's cool. Well, we're going to take a little quick break, and you're going to see some PVD highlights. And we'll be back, and we'll talk about the upcoming season and what Parker thinks we might be able to do. See you on the other side.
Okay, so you're a senior. I got to ask you this question. You've been through a lot of wars here. We know you're a great three-point shooter, but you had maybe the dunk of the season. It was a two-hander off of 2 feet.
Yeah.
First question I have, was that the first dunk ever in your career at Utah?
Yes, first dunk ever at Utah, and it felt pretty good. I've had some other opportunities too, and I've just gone and laid it up. And so when I got this deal, I was feeling good. Legs were feeling good. So I thought, I'm a senior, might as well throw one down. So it felt great. It was a lot of fun.
Cedric. I'm going to stick with Cedric with an F.
Van Dyke. Last year in the NBA play was his rookie year.
More important than the recruiting is the long-term getting the right guy. Possessions in the history of U of A basketball.
Van Dyke lets it.
It's going to be full of solar, wind, and most importantly, battery.
How about fire?
Van Dyke is everywhere.
Van Dyke tickling to make it a 14-point game.
Thank you, Greg Popovich.
Parker Van Dyke with a great pass along the baseline.
Everything Van Dyke.
We're back, and again, Parker Van Dyke is our guest on the show today, and man, what a fun story to hear him talk about that three, the game-winning three against UCLA, and the thing that triggered kind of the last part of his career to give him a little more success than he had been having. Still always a solid player, certainly played with a lot of heart and everything, but he really upped his game. I remember. And I'm going to have to go back and look, but I was telling Parker that I remember, it seemed like several games in a row he was getting 4 and 5 and 6 threes. And it got to a point where I just, I know going in, Parker's going to get 4 or 5 or 6 threes in this game. Where's the rest of is Cedric going to be on, and is he going to be able to get 20-ish, which he'd been kind of averaging and that kind of thing. And then other than those two, where's the rest of it going to come from? So, it's... That's kind of what my memory of Parker was like, especially at the end of his career. So very cool stuff. But now, we don't have any PVDs on this team that I could tell. We have a guy that I think could be kind of your style of play. He's a little taller than you, so he might get a chance to dunk a little more often. Yeah. At 6'5", and that's Gabe Madsen. Mm-hmm. He's a freshman right now, but COVID freshman, so... He's a transfer from Cincinnati, And for some reason, as soon as I saw him transfer, I looked up his career kind of thing. He was a 4-star coming out of high school, and I kind of latched on to him because I feel like he's the kind of player that can do really well here. And I think we've got a number of just hard-working players and that kind of thing. And I know that you were there at the exhibition game the other day, and I wanted to get your feedback on kind of maybe who you think's going to stand out, what kind of roles some of the different players are going to play, where you think we might finish in the conference and that kind of thing.
Well, you mentioned Gabe. I do want to say I've met Gabe a few times and played some pickup with him over the summer. He's first off a great kid, a really good guy, and he's got the right mentality, which is you first and foremost need that to be a successful player in the Pac-12. You got to have a good work ethic. You got to be a good guy on and off the floor, and you got to have the right mentality. And I think Gabe has that, so he definitely has some potential. One thing I know and I like about this team is there's a great sense of camaraderie with these guys. They like each other. They like playing with each other. They like the coaching staff. It seems to be a resurgence of energy that they have that they probably didn't have last year a lot because of COVID. They had to deal with all the COVID protocols last year. I know that there was some turmoil within the team because of that. And so it seems that there is a resurgence of enthusiasm, optimism because, hey, there's a new staff, but there's also, we have fans in the stands. We're back to a little bit normal life. And so I think that's something to be excited for with this team. A couple of individuals that I'm looking forward to, you're interested to see how guys like Marco Anthony and Raleigh Worcester, they had good playing careers with Utah State. How are they going to adjust to the Pac-12? On Tuesday, I was really impressed with David Jenkins, who's the transfer from UNLV, specifically his not only his ability to shoot the ball, but his quick release.
He does have a quick release.
He has a really great quick release, which is going to be needed. He's smaller than I thought.
Right,
yeah, he's
right.
only 6'1", but that's really going to be needed when we start playing against the taller, more athletic, talented teams within the Pac-12.
Right.
To be able to be ready to down in a stance, ready to shoot, and then be able to get off quickly and effectively.
Right.
So those are a couple things that stood out to me. I also really like the way that Riley Batten and Brandon Carlson have entered the year. Jackson Brenchley, another guy. These are guys that are returning from the old staff with the new staff. I really expect them to be key leaders as they lead this team into a new era of Utah basketball.
Right. So we're picked to finish 10th by the media, and I don't think that sits well with any of the Utah fans, and we've heard that Coach Smith in his first year up at Utah State was picked to finish last and they won the conference. I don't necessarily expect them to win the conference, but I'm thinking from what I've seen of this team, I think they've got some good toughness. I think they've got, some people like you mentioned, Marco Anthony. He reminds me of Albert Springs. For anybody who is familiar with the teams of the 80s, Albert Springs was a very athletic guy who wasn't all that offensively skilled, but could play defense like no other. And I kind of think Marco Anthony is that kind of guy. Selfless player. He doesn't need, to score 20 points and be in the limelight like that. But if you saw the game the other night, he had a nice little dunk on a drive. And was playing tough defense. He's well built, so he can handle some bigger guys as well. And I look at, I think we've got a good mix of role players, defensive specialist kind of people, and some people that can shoot us back in the game, like Gabe Madsen had 3 threes in a row right at the end of the game last week. So what are your thoughts on some of that?
My last 3 years at Utah, we were picked in the bottom half, and we finished in the top 4 each of those 3 years. So we seem to overachieve. Specifically with this team, Craig Smith said something interesting at Pac-12 Media Day. It's like, it's to be expected with the low ranking when you get a new staff because you're new, and you got to earn respect to get those higher rankings, and they've yet to do that because it's new. It's a new team. It's a new coaching staff. So I'm not surprised by the 10th place preseason ranking. I would say I think that they're better than that. I do think they'll finish probably somewhere in the 6th to 8th range, which I think is a good start, especially when you got a bunch of new players and a new coaching staff. So it's something to build on in the future. But like you said, I like the buildup of the team. Marco Anthony is a guy that you look at and you say that's a Pac-12 looking player, just because of the way that he's built, his ability to guard probably 1 through 4 because of his size, and so there's pieces there. I'm anxious to see how we do against some high level competition. But like I said before, the camaraderie of the team is something really good. And you got to have, if you're handling your business off the floor, you have a good, strong locker room, that's going to lead to good things on the floor, whether that's this year or whether that's in the years to come. So I like that with this team.
Now, you mentioned that you've played some pickup ball with Gabe, and so you got to know him a little bit through that and saw how he could play. He also seems fairly well built, not somebody who's going to be pushed around too easy.
Yeah.
And so what I'd like to do is throw out a couple of names that either could be key players or are just interesting because maybe they played for Coach Smith previously or whatever, and get your quick thoughts on each of them. We'll start off with Brandon Carlson.
Brandon is obviously a defensive prowess, right? I mean, he's a great shot blocker. One thing he's improved on this year, we saw a little bit on Tuesday. He's a good shooter. He can really shoot it outside. The Powder League is a pro-am league that college and pro players play in the summer that I played in. And in that league, I actually played with Riley Batten. He was on my team, played against Brandon Carlson. And the game we played against Brandon Carlson, he probably had about 25 points and probably had 6 threes. And so his ability to shoot the ball outside has improved. Obviously, he's a defensive threat with his block shots. And he seems to be stronger this year. So that's something I think Utah fans can look forward to, is that his continual growth on the defensive end and his outside game expanding with his ability to shoot a three.
And it looked like he had a little bit more of a post-up game as well. He's always been kind of that mid-range kind of guy. And I think that, wherever he might play pro, he might be kind of a stretch 4 or maybe play some 5 if he can get a little more, weight on him. But it does seem like, as he develops more of a post-up game, it's really going to help kind of, everything, his whole game, because they're going to have to respect that. Then he can step out, open up the floor for other people, and if he can also dribble it a little bit. So if he steps out and the big guy, comes out closes out a little too hard, you can go by him and, finish at the rim, because he is pretty long and athletic.
My recommendation to Brandon Carlson, if he's listening to this, is to watch film of David Collette in terms of post play, because that's one thing that Utah really does need, and it can be either Riley or Brandon, where you can, when you need a bucket, you throw it in the post and you get some easy buckets that way. Dave had an amazing run my junior year where he was I don't think he missed a shot for like 3 straight games, just because of our ability. We needed a bucket, throw the ball in the post to Dave, and he's able to go to a back to the basket move and score. If Brandon can add a level of that to his game, that can make him really tough, and that can be really beneficial for the youth.
But the thing that Collette has that Brandon doesn't is a little bit of
he had some size for sure. Dave was also pretty old. Brandon's a return missionary as well, but Dave probably had a year or 2 on him.
Right.
Brandon can get to that point.
Yeah, cool. Raleigh Worcester.
Raleigh, I'm really impressed with the way Raleigh looks physically. I think he's
looks like he lost a little weight. Maybe
he's thinned down. He's cut. He's a little bit more cut than he was last year with Utah State. It's funny that we kind of traded him for Rylan Jones. Like Rylan went up to Utah State. We got Raleigh. They remind me a lot alike of each other, the way that they play. Raleigh's a little bit bigger, and so can Raleigh. What I expect for Raleigh, and what we need him to do, I think, is Utah basketball. He just needs to be the extension of Craig Smith on the floor. And he needs to be the quarterback of the team, a guy who can just lead the tempo of the team, handle the ball, get people in the right spot, and just command the flow of the offense, really. That's all I really expect him to do, is kind of be that extension of Greg Smith and be that quarterback on the floor and keep the tempo of the team at the pace that they want to be. Because one thing I know from the Pac-12 is when you play the USCs, the Arizonas, UCLAs, the Arizona States, they like to get up and down.
Right.
And they like to play fast, and they've got the athletes. And Oregon, exactly. They've got the athletes and the talent to do that. Sometimes Utah, we're not that kind of team. And so we need to play at our pace. And so that's what's important. You need to have a point guard who's able to control that pace. Justin Bibbins was very good at that at Utah for his 1 year he played with us. So if Raleigh can do that, control the tempo of the game, that can keep us into some games and potentially win some ones that we're not supposed to.
So now, I want to take a little detour before I go to the next name. Just because you look at Raleigh, like you would look at Rylan. I think Raleigh could be better defensively just because he's bigger and can handle bigger guys, and he has a little more length. So if he does get beaten, he can recover more easily. But I wonder, somebody I was talking to made mention that we don't have a lot of quickness at the guard line, and Jenkins doesn't seem like the kind of guard that's going to be interested in driving a lot because he does have such a good three. I think he was 42-ish% from three.
Yeah.
And so he might tend to rely more on the three, which says, hey, we need somebody who can penetrate, draw and dish, or finish at the rim, that kind of thing. I'm not sure that Raleigh is capable of that on a consistent basis, but more so I'm wondering on the defensive end. Now, don't get me wrong. I like Raleigh. I think he's a good player. He definitely looks like he's in better shape than he was last year. And at 6'4", give or take, if you've met him in person, he's
about that. Maybe 6'2", maybe 6'2", 6'3", somewhere around there.
Right around your height, probably.
That's because that's who the Pac-12 is, right? They've got quick guards with length who can penetrate and get on top of the rim.
Right.
Now, you can have success on the offensive side without having to get on top of the rim in terms of penetrating, right? I mentioned Justin Bibbins before. He was the shortest guy on the floor every night.
5'8".
But his ability to play in the paint and on the ground under control is just as effective as a guy who can get on top of the rim.
Right.
And then defensively, that's where I think Marco Anthony comes in. If you've got a real stud on the other teams, a 6'4", long athletic guard, that's a guy you can move Raleigh off of him and move like the Gabe Madsons, Jackson Brinchleys off that guy and put a Marco on him. A key guy that we may not get this year that is back is Booth Gotch. Booth is a guy with the length and the talent and the athleticism equivalent to those guys that could really help Utah in terms of offensively penetrating, getting on top of the rim, that ability, and then also the length and the quickness to guard those guys. So are we going to get Booth this year? It's still up in the air. We don't know.
Hopefully the NCAA gives us a break.
Yeah, because he's kind of the missing piece of this team. Because I agree. You look at that. Who is our guard like that? That's going to match up with those other Pac-12 guards that the league has. And Booth's the guy. Now, if we don't get him, we'll have to move. We'll have to try to adjust without him this year. But if we can get him, that'll be big for our team.
Right. Let's Riley Batten.
I love Riley. He's one of my favorite guys I ever played with at Utah. He was a freshman when I was a senior. I have my own podcast, so I haven't mentioned it yet. The PVD for 3 podcast.
Yeah, my bad. So PVD for 3.
Yeah.
I was gonna get to that.
But, no problem. But I only mention it now because I interviewed Riley last week on it, and I'm really excited with Riley. He's one of those players. When I was talking about a resurgence of optimism and hope and confidence, he's the key to that. He has that this summer. He gained that. Where he is really confident going into this year. He doesn't feel like he's, the last couple of years he felt like he was always looking over his shoulder. If he ever made a mistake,
like he's going to get yanked.
He's going to get yanked. And I don't think he has that. I think he's a leader and a captain of this team. That 4 position is pretty much his to have. And so he can play more relaxed. And so I'm expecting a big year confidence-wise with Riley Batten. I mentioned the Powder League earlier. He won the MVP of that league. Our team won the championship, and he won the MVP. So
wow.
Big things to come with Riley, and he's a skilled guy where he can score with his back to the basket and also be a pick and pop guy. So I'm really high on Riley going into this year. So this year, I agree. I saw some of those things where he was making good moves and he had opportunities to shoot, but there was still a little sense of hesitation, which that's a tough thing as a player that I've experienced where you don't want to mess up, and so you hesitate a little bit. Where I would recommend right now, especially. To err on the side of aggressiveness because we're playing, lower competition teams, Abilene Christian, Westminster, Bethune-Cookman, Sacramento State. Err on the side of aggressiveness now. Don't hesitate when you have open shots and open opportunities so that when the Pac-12 level comes, you're ready to make those plays and make those shots. So, Riley, when you get that open opportunity to shoot it, you're a good enough shooter, just let it fly, and we'll deal with the makes or misses afterwards.
Right. Excellent. Yeah, I like Riley. I think he's a skilled player. I think he's a smart player. He's got decent size, and so I'm all for what you said. And so now, what I'd like to see is we've talked about Gabe Madsen, talked a little bit about Dave Jenkins. I like the fire that he has.
Yeah.
You know, he got that T.
Yeah.
But I'm
You need
okay with
that.
that sometimes.
Yeah, no.
You know, I like the guy that has a little attitude.
Yeah, you need that.
And, you know, we talked a little bit about Marco Anthony and Brandon Carlson and Raleigh Worcester and, of course, Riley Batten. Talked a little bit about hoping we get Booth Gosh back and everything. Among those players or any of the other players that we haven't mentioned, you know, Mahorchik and, you know, some of those guys, what are your thoughts on who might be a player, whether it's a starter or an off-the-bench guy, who's going to be able to maybe give us that little bit of push, be a glue guy or be somebody that's going to, you know, if we didn't have him, you know, he's injured or something, you know, then there's a definite drop-off in play that we're going to be able. Now, obviously, if you lose a point guard and he's the only pure point guard on the team, that could be a thing. But who's going to be the person that kind of helps us get to that? What I think our, you know, whatever our ceiling is this year.
Yeah. Well, I think now that you said a point guard, like Raleigh seems to be our only true point guard on the roster right now, so that would be a huge hurt. But I think all signs kind of point to Marco Anthony right now. He seems to be the guy. He seems to be the Swiss Army knife, a guy who can do multiple things, can guard multiple positions, and kind of be the glue guy. You can put him in any situation, then he can be a threat. So he's the guy when I think of right off the bat, because he's kind of the only guy that we have like him, a guy who can guard multiple positions, play multiple positions, and you know, he's just kind of a Swiss Army knife. So he's kind of the guy that sticks out right off the top of my head in terms of a guy that would really hurt us if we lost him, because I don't think we have anyone else really like him.
Right. Yeah, not a whole lot of guys on our team with a 42-inch vertical or whatever it is.
No. And so he's that guy. He was someone. That's what Timmy Allen could bring to the team especially when I played with him as a freshman. He was a guy who could guard their point guard and guard their four-man and play the three on offense, something like that.
Right.
And that's something Marco can provide. One thing I don't know about Marco is his ability to shoot from outside. I haven't really seen his shot. He has a better-looking shot than Timmy. He's a lefty.
Yeah. It's hard not to have a better-looking shot than Timmy.
Yeah, and so is his. If he could open up his ability, where if they're going to play off him, where he can, you know, hit a catch and shoot three, that'll really help him. So that's yet to be known. I've
seen him shoot a little bit, but he doesn't seem to be all that comfortable with wanting to be that guy. And to me, you know, it'd be ideally you want everybody to be multidimensional.
Yeah.
You want everybody to be able to, you know, shoot from distance. Or if you got a good closeout on defense, then you want them to be able to put the ball on the floor and take it by, and you want them to be able to have good court vision so that they can either finish at the rim, or if somebody, you know, comes off their man and guards him, he's able to kick it out to the now open person for a good shot. And you know. The kind of players that can do all those kind of things on our team I'm thinking Madsen can probably be. I don't think he's just a catch and shoot kind of guy.
Yeah.
I think he can take it to the hole a little bit. I think Raleigh proved that a little bit, or at least showed that a little bit in the opening game. Although I'm not sure he's, you know, knocked down three-point shooter as much as we'd like to see. But I think that the Marco Anthony type player is great, because I think people like him might create some transition opportunities for us.
He's a guy that can get out in the open floor, and that's one thing that Booth would really help with. That's what Booth, I think, is his best. When I played with him, what he's best at is getting the rebound and going and getting on top of the rim.
He was fast.
Yeah, fast. He's Russell Westbrook capabilities at the college level, that ability, and also to run the wing. So that's one thing that we do lack right now with Utah basketball, but we'll see how these players do, is just that ability to get out and run up in the open floor. Marco Anthony and Booth are one of those. You mentioned players having weakness and all that, and yeah, not every player is going to be able to do it all, right? Catch and shoot, drive, finish on the rim, and make the right decision. So what my mindset was when I had deficiency as a player is do my strength as well as I could, catch and shoot it as well as I possibly could, and stay away from my weaknesses as much as I could. Right. Utilize my strengths as much as I could. If there was things I knew I couldn't do or couldn't get away with, then stay away from them. And that's a big key of being successful, really.
In anything.
Knowing what you do well and doing it, and knowing what you don't do well and don't do it. It seems simple, but that takes a while for a young basketball player to understand. And that's what the beauty of the NBA is everyone knows their role. They know what they do well, and they do it, and they know what they can't do, and they stay away from it.
Well, and in the NBA, you see a lot of teams even signing like specialists.
Yeah, specialists. Yeah.
People who they may not do anything else, but they need this in their lineup, and they go and sign and pay millions of dollars for that one thing that they do.
They're called. I mean, the big thing in the NBA now is they're called 3-and-D guys.
Right.
Well, it's Royce O'Neal. It's PJ Tucker. You defend. You defend usually sometimes the best player on the other team, and then you run to the corner and you get ready to catch and shoot.
Right.
and they're making millions of dollars.
Tucker is good from the corner.
Yeah, he is great from the corner, and so. This is another conversation that we could have is the transition from being the guy where you score in all ways in high school. I mean, I scored in every way imaginable in high school. I posted up, I took people off the dribble, hit mid-range, went all the way to the rim, pull up threes, all that stuff. But when you get to the higher level, you realize not all of that stuff's going to work. So you got to adjust. And so in college, I was a catch and shoot guy, a one dribble shot guy. And so I had to adjust that, and it takes some time, but I was able to find success in that role. Now, I'm not saying you can't expand your game, but find out what you're best at and stick to it.
I think that's great advice in any career, but and like you said, you're not saying that you shouldn't expand your game, because I think everybody should always be working on the deficiencies to make them. Maybe they'll never be as good at that as they are what they're best at, but if they can be at least average at it, then it might come in handy on certain situations rather than, oh, here comes a turnover.
Yeah. What I always say is embrace the role that you've been given, but don't settle for it.
Right.
So if you've been given a role like mine, catch and shoot, play hard on defense and run the fast break for open layups, things like that, embrace it. And be your best at it, but also don't settle. Improve your ball handling, improve your decision-making in the paint, things like that. So embrace it, but don't settle for it.
Right. Excellent points. Now, Parker, just to close out, let's. What are you doing now?
What am I doing now? My life isn't as exciting as it was when I was a Utah basketball player. I'll tell you that. I miss playing for the Utes. Those were some incredible years of my life that I'll always remember. And you don't know what you've quite got until it's gone. And I often look back at highlights and my time playing there, and it's like, man, those were special moments. But since I've finished playing at the U, I've continued to play. I've played the last 2 years professionally. I played in Mexico my first year before COVID hit, and then I played last year in the European country of Estonia in Eastern Europe. Played there last season.
Population of about 1 million, and it's fairly close to Russia. It's a great little country. I've been there.
It is. I was in the the country capital of Tallinn, which is actually a hidden gem in Europe. It's a beautiful city. The one thing that was rough about that experience is just COVID hit them really hard.
I bet.
Our league was shut down a couple times when I was there, and so that was rough. But a great place to live, and I enjoyed my European experience. Right now, I would still like to continue to play, so I'm probably going to go back to the team I played for in Mexico. They won't start up again until about January or February. They actually haven't started since COVID hit.
Wow.
But that team was actually a really good team when I was there. Henry Bibby is the coach of that team.
Yep.
Former
UCLA guy.
Yeah, UCLA guy. Played with Dr. J. My favorite player of all time is actually Pistol Pete Maravich. And he played with Pistol Pete.
You're kind of Pistols.
Yeah, I'm a little bit like Pistol. So he played with Pistol Pete back with the New Orleans Jazz, played with Dr. J, and obviously played for John Wooden. And so he's an unbelievable coach. Coached at USC for a few years. So he's the coach of that team. I'd love to go back there. But in the meantime, I do a lot of coaching and personal training with local youth players. Do a little work at East High School, my alma mater, and then, like we mentioned earlier, I have my own sports podcast, the PVD for 3 sports podcast that I have a lot of fun with. I'm not just a basketball guy. I'm a big baseball, football guy as well, so we talk all about that. My next episode, I'm a huge Atlanta Braves fan.
Huh?
That's actually, those are the Braves.
They just won the World Series for those of you who aren't following baseball.
Yeah, they did. My first love was the Braves and World Series. So this next week's episode, my brother and I, we're going to just talk all about the Braves run to the World Series. And I've really enjoyed it. It just gives me a platform. We already talk about sports all the time. We were mentioning this earlier. We talk about sports all the time. Why not put it in a platform where something can be built off it and other people can enjoy it? So
right.
That's what I'm up to now, and it's not as good as my Utah basketball life, but it's a good life.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't follow baseball that closely, the Braves actually had a losing record for the first roughly half of the season. And I'm a Mets fan, so you can commiserate with me.
They were the Mets were on the rise. This is the beginning.
They were. They have a lot of great young players and whatnot, and a lot of potential. I hate that word.
Yeah.
When you're a fan of a team that never realizes their potential, it's like the F word. You know, it's a bad word. So,
but the Braves and the Mets kind of switched spots.
They did. Mets were first, and then they started losing in the second half and never stopped losing for the most part. And the Braves just kept winning. They ended up 15 games above 500 and then winning the darn World Series. And that's all right because I've met Dale Murphy, who was an all-star for the Braves for a number of years. And Dale's a great guy, and so I'm a kind of a closet Braves fan.
Hard not to cheer for a guy like Dale Murphy.
Yeah, hard not to. But anyway, Parker, we really appreciate your time on the show and hope to have you back, on a semi-regular or regular basis and, give your thoughts on what Utah's doing throughout the course of the season and whatnot. So selfishly, I hope Mexico starts later, like after the basketball season.
Hey, I enjoyed being on. I love, like I said at the beginning, I love talking anything about the Utes. This is a great setup you got here, so anytime. Thanks for having me on.
Yep, right on. Maybe we'll talk a little football next time as well and, do double duty here. But hope you enjoyed it. Go check out his podcast. I'll have the link below in the description. And we'll look forward to seeing you guys next time. We'll come out with one more episode this week with the football game. And like Parker just did,
go Utes.